computer. Hello and welcome, everyone. So today we are here to start off the second webinar that is part of a series that we are conducting during November and December. And if you have been here before, you know me, I'm Alexander Brunner, and I work as a partner relations coordinator here at AI Sweden and based in Stockholm, Sweden as well. And my colleague Peter is also here with us today, that you all know. And he is based in Canada, as you know, in Montreal, Canada. So let's start this webinar off straight away. And the agenda for today is as follows. We will start off with a short hi and welcome, and then we'll give you a short little overview of AI Sweden and the Canadian soft landing. Then we'll hand over the word to Uffe. And finally, we will have the main act of today, which today's webinar, which will have a presentation from Erik Josefsson, CEO at Revolution, and which will be very exciting. And we'll finally end up the webinar with a short Q&A session. So, as you know, I represent an organization called AI Sweden, and we are really here to accelerate the use of AI in Sweden. And our main mission is basically to accelerate the use of AI to the benefit of our society, our competitiveness, and everyone living in Sweden. And we are working with over 100 partners here in Sweden, and to really strengthen the Swedish AI ecosystem, we also understand that we have to work elsewhere as well. So we work internationally, and we work, as you know, we work in the Canadian ecosystem, as it's one of the strongest AI ecosystems in the world. And we are the National Center for Applied AI in Sweden, and therefore we are a neutral and non-profit, and we're working with research, we're working with corporates, public sector, small and medium-sized enterprises, and academic institutions. And this really is to represent all of the Swedish sectors. So, and we are really spread all over Sweden as well. We go from the north, where we have mining operations going on, where there are a lot of corporates working with mining up there, down to the south, and to the Stockholm area, and to the west coast, where there's a lot of automotive sectors working. And here is a picture of all of our partners. We are currently over 100 plus partners. We have the big corporates to small SMEs and startups. And we also work with the public sector, academia, and this gives us really good access to talent as well as we work with the academia. And we really try to represent Sweden in all of these areas. So that is what we do here at AI Sweden in Sweden, and we're also based in Montreal, as I mentioned. So I will pass the word over to Peter to tell you a bit more what he does over in Montreal.
Thank you, Alexander. And as Alexander mentioned, we are really working with the entire Swedish ecosystem and really trying to push AI and really drive the adoption of AI in Swedish industry and in Swedish public sector. And to do so, we need to be present in other ecosystems too, because as you know, the AI race is a truly global race and development is happening everywhere, but especially in Canada and here in Quebec. So since a year ago, I'm based here to really scout for innovation, scout for startups, and scout for interesting research from our partners or for our partners towards or in the Canadian ecosystem. And that's really also why we're doing this webinar series and looking for really innovative startups within AI-enabled innovation or AI-enabled startups to really help our partners become more competitive on a global scale or in the global market. And to do so, we're teaming up with different organizations in Canada. I'm based at MILA, the Deep Learning Institute here in Montreal, but we're working with institutes everywhere. So, for example, we're working in Alberta. We want to work with Alberta Innovate. In Toronto, we are working with the Vector Institute, and then obviously a lot of different organizations here in Quebec. So we're really out here looking for the most interesting things happening in the AI space in all different sectors. We represent partners in the automotive industry, within logistics, within industrial manufacturing or smart industry, and also then in sustainability that we will hear more about today. So we are looking for all kinds of innovations, all kinds of startups. So if you have an interest in targeting the Swedish market or even the European market and entering the European market through Sweden, we want to team up with you. We want to help you access potential customers in Sweden. We want to open up doors so that it's not a cold introduction, it becomes a warm introduction instead. So we really want to use our platform both here in Canada but especially in Sweden to create opportunities for you as a startups to make with the purpose of making our industry also more competitive. So we have different work streams, obviously, and so we do a lot of ecosystem to ecosystem collaboration. We're working with strategic initiatives and strategic areas of applied AI, so both research and more adoption. So startups obviously falls into that category, and then we do a lot of knowledge sharing too. But then we have this soft landing and scale up attraction program where we want you to be a part of it if you have an interest in new potential customers on the Scandinavian and Swedish market. So then we have a very easy application program. We will work with our ecosystem to find the best matches for you. It's really an ongoing project where we're doing this webinar series to inspire more Canadian startups to apply. But it's also also teaming up with Swedish startups. So what we've known so far and what we've learned is that startups can help startups. Startups can help each other have a more competitive value proposition, have a more competitive offer. So also using each other's as distribution of their products or services. So this is I think we've learned so far that we might also open up a potential startup partner for you in our network so that you will become more attractive and do like a more of a soft move to a new potential market and use an existing network to access that. So we are here open. You will find more information on our website that will be in the chat here or in the links down below for the recording. And with that said, we also have different applied projects that Alexander will walk through if you have an interest in them.
Yes, sorry about that. Got held up a bit. So we have a few some different applied projects that we're working on. We have a natural NLU team, natural language understanding team that is working on a large language model for the Swedish language. We're also working with a information-driven healthcare here in Sweden, and also climate change, and working with edge lab learning as well. So we are trying to cover a lot of different areas that we see high potential for the Swedish market. And now a bit more concrete information about the soft landing. We are really here to source global startups to drive Swedish innovation. And so really short about the program. It's basically a program where we will help you and introduce you to our Swedish ecosystem to meet with some of the big corporates and also other startups, as Peter mentioned as well. And we will attract international talent to help the Swedish corporate and public sector innovate faster through sourcing global innovation. And we have set a potential visit to Sweden in January next year, but this is a preliminary date at the moment. And as we mentioned, this is part of a webinar series, which we are organizing together with our partners, Business Sweden and the Canadian Embassy in Sweden. So we are putting focus on the focus is today is green tech and clean tech together with Revolution. And on the previous one, we had a focus on automotive industry, and the next one's coming up. We will probably be about manufacturing our smart industry 4.0, which will be on December 7th. So with that said, I am going to stop sharing my screen and hand the word over to Uffe.
Thank you, Alex. And hello, everybody. Let me see if I can just quickly share my screen. Are you able to see a PowerPoint?
No, not yet.
Maybe not. Still no PowerPoint?
No.
That's odd. That's odd. As I clicked on share screen, and it seems to be working fine. But no matter. What I was going to do anyway is, can you see anything? Can you see me?
Yes, we can see you.
All right, let's go with that then. Oh, maybe it's asking me which screen I want to share. So why don't I do that? Can you now see this screen?
Yes, we see a standing screen with a lot of a wooden panel. Looks like a library or store. Now we can see. Oh, there it was.
Now I know what I have to do. Now you should be able to see a presentation.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm using a notebook that I don't normally use. Nonetheless, happy to be here with you. I understand that I will tell you briefly about the Trade Commissioner Service, which is who I actually work for. We're based at the Embassy of Canada to Sweden, and I'll tell you a little bit about Sweden itself. I'm going to use some slides that I recently have been using to explain Sweden to Canadian companies. I have just come back from a 2-week trip to Toronto, so happy to tell you some more of the good news about Sweden. And this is really fine. The Trade Commissioner Service is part of the federal government of Canada. What we do in a nutshell is we help Canadian companies do business abroad. We are present in about 160 cities around the world and pretty much every big city in Canada, throughout every province. And we trade commissioners are basically business developers who specialize in different sectors. In Sweden, there are 4 of us. We are specialized in different sectors. I cover ICT, or information and communication technologies, and I have colleagues that cover the other big economy sectors that are vital for Canada, things from pulp and paper to automotive to life sciences, consumer products, and so on. And most of our colleagues, we all have over 15 years of experience doing precisely this. So we are very happy to help Canadian companies do business over here. A bit of what we do is also bring foreign direct investment back to Canada, but that is a small percentage of what we do. We have another person who works full-time doing that. So we concentrate on helping Canadian companies do business in Sweden. The nice thing about that is that we're very well aligned with AI Sweden and with Business Sweden as well. We all endeavor to do the same thing, which is help Canadian companies do business here, among other things. So it's a very nice and propitious situation for any Canadian company to be in touch with all these 3 organizations, because you get the best possible help from all of them. What we do for Canadian companies is we qualify the market, we speak to the company, and we help them understand if it's a good fit. We give them market information, we make qualified introductions to decision makers who are target audience for them. We help with problem solving, and we help fit Canadian companies into different organizations in Sweden. We also give some information. For example, Canada offers something through the Can Export program, among many other things that if you're not familiar with, I'll just briefly tell you because it's interesting. In one fiscal year, a Canadian company can apply for financing of up to 50,000 Canadian dollars that can be given back to the company for things related to doing business abroad. And these can cover trips, these can cover translation, they can cover traveling, they can cover participation in events. If you Google the Can Export program, or you contact me later, I'll be happy to send you more information about that. You can spend up to 100,000, and the Can Export program will give you 50,000 back. And I think that's sort of a good nutshell explanation of what we do. We help Canadian companies do business abroad. We're here in Sweden to help Canadian companies do business in Sweden, and I cover ICT, information communication technologies, and that'll cover everything from fintech to gaming to software as a service to telecom, IoT. It's a very broad basket. And I'm always happy to speak to any Canadian company. If you're not exactly my sector, I'll introduce you to the trade commissioner, who will be the person who will be relevant and responsible for your company as per your sector. On to Sweden a little bit. Sweden and Canada are a very interesting mix, and there's something that makes my life a lot easier because Canadians and Swedes sort of speak the same business language. They share a lot of similarities in demographics and in business culture. Canadians and Swedes have the same sort of societal focuses on things like equality, gender equality, minorities, the environment for sure, which is possibly even a bigger deal in Sweden than it is in Canada, and I mean that in the best way possible. And so Canadians and Swedes often speak the same language when they do business, which is something that makes my life a lot easier and is very good and helps a lot with doing business for Canada over here in general. I might also at this point mention CETA, which not a lot of people are familiar with. It's spelled CETA if you choose to Google it, which is the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, which is closed between Canada and the European Union. It is very broad, very comprehensive, and it brings, I'm going to guess a number, don't quote me on it, but about 95% of products tariffs will go down considerably. And it also makes participation in business in general easier. So for example, for Canadian companies to bid on government contracts, public licitation bids, that kind of stuff. We've heard from companies in Canada that sometimes it's easier to do business with countries in the European Union thanks to CETA than with companies in neighboring provinces in Canada. So that's how effective it is, and it's definitely something to bear in mind if you will choose to one day export anything to the European Union. Other similarities that exist are in demographics. So the population pyramid, Sweden and Canada are similar. Sweden and Canada have similarities in the dispersion. We have most of the population in the south of Sweden. And the same thing for Canada, where, 90% of the population is in a 2-hour drive from the US. We cover in Sweden pretty much every sector, perhaps with a notable exception of oil and gas, which Norway is very strong in. Sweden has a mixed economy that goes from agricultural to services. You may have heard on the digital arena, things like Mojang, Spotify, Klarna, the biggest fintech unicorn out of Europe, is Swedish, opening offices in Canada. And then there are all the other industrial companies that many people don't know about. And that's another similarity between Canada and Sweden, that a lot of Canadians and Swedes don't position and pitch themselves as being Swedish or Canadian. And so a lot of people don't know that there's a very, very, very long list of Swedish companies that one can do business with, which are Swedish and based in Sweden, that go way beyond the usual IKEA and Volvo. Many of them are B2B, so people would know about them if they're outside of their usual business sectors. There are some very interesting organizations in Sweden as well for doing business. There are, for example, accelerators that belong not only to the academia arena and to government and science parks and so on, but to the corporate world. So, for example, Volvo Cars and Volvo Trucks and Ericsson, they have an accelerator incubator devoted to the mobility space, which the Trade Commissioner Service put 3-4 companies from Canada into in their last round. ABB has another one as well called Synerleap, which is also very interesting, and I'll be happy to tell more Canadian companies about as well. And like those, there are other ones. Volvo has one called CampX. So we of the Trade Commissioner Service, and I'm sure Business Sweden as well, we often collaborate to put Canadian companies in touch with these accelerators and incubators because, and this is my personal opinion, this is not official from the Trade Commissioner Service, but based on my experience, for the large majority of Canadian companies, there are 2 main avenues that are really interesting for looking at Sweden. Number one is because of the large pool of industrial companies and business-to-business companies that I mentioned earlier, Sweden is a very interesting country to piggyback with these companies and go abroad very easily. If one considers that Sweden has a population of 10.5 million people, Swedish companies, in order to grow, have had to go abroad. So most of these companies have operations in every continent, dozens of countries, tens of thousands of employees. So take an example, ABB. If you do business with ABB, which is Swedish Swiss, has offices in Stockholm and in Zurich, you're automatically doing business with ABB clients and suppliers around the world if you get into their facility program, for example. So that is one interesting thing to look at for Sweden. If you are an AI company, there are a lot of companies over here that are present worldwide, and one can piggyback with them. Not to take too much of your time, going on to the second avenue that I think is interesting is the fact that Sweden is a highly digitalized economy, perhaps more than any country in Europe. Less than 1% of our transactions are cash. I've signed contracts on my iPhone, and Swedes are early adopters and they're very tech savvy. So it's an interesting place to test pilot solutions as well as to piggyback with these big companies. Language is not a problem. The ICT infrastructure is incredible. And so those are two very interesting approaches to look at Sweden and why one should look at Sweden. Case in point, I think at the beginning of this year, end of last year, the Swedish fifth biggest gaming company spent $300 million in Canada buying studios, for example. So, and that's the fifth biggest one, and that's just in gaming. So there's a lot of interesting companies to look at over here, be it to sell to or to do joint research and development with, and development in general. I think I've taken a lot of your time, and perhaps there will be questions at the end. So with that, perhaps I should break now. Thank you.
Thank you, Uffe. And as mentioned, we'll do questions in the end of the webinar too. But as you see, there's a lot of opportunities to open up doors, both at our partners, but also external partners. And with that said, we would like to take up Erik on the digital stage here to talk about the Revolution. It was really one of these really interesting tech transfer integration programs from Swedish larger corporates, so to support startups and really scout for startups globally. So Erik, let's hear more about Revolution and all of the really super interesting things you're doing together with startups.
Just need to unmute myself. I guess now it's the same check here. We have a lot of screens, and I hope that you see my screen now, right?
Yes, we see your PowerPoint.
Super. Great. So awesome to be here. I'm from Hexagon Revolution, and this is the business venture that is focusing fully on green tech. And hope after this session that you're a little bit more familiar with one of the most interesting Swedish companies, if we're talking that way, because Hexagon is the most valued tech company on the Stockholm Stock Exchange. Just to put that into values, you have Ericsson maybe around 200 billion SEK, and we are around 300. So that means fairly significant size on this company. But what we are doing as Revolution is to take all that technology and apply that to green tech. But why? And the underlying reason is the graph that you see here. We have scaled, but we haven't scaled sustainable. And this is 4.3 billion years that the Earth has existed, squeezed into a graph of 365 days. Human being has only existed 23 minutes of that, and we have already consumed 30% of all the available resources. When I was born, 87, I think there were 5 billion people on this planet, now around 8 billion, if I remember right, and it goes fast. So we are growing in population, we're growing in GDP, but we're doing that at the price. So we're consuming currently like 2 Earths. We need to be then at least twice as good, or I think we can be 10 times as good if we get all the data and solutions into motion to save this planet. That's why we in Hexagon are accelerating our digital software stacks and sensor stack towards green tech with the vehicle of Revolution. And we want to invite as many partners, startups, and the whole community to do that together with us. We believe that, and you can check this on our webpage, but what if we get this right by 2030? Like, let's take the positive spin on it. There will be significant potential in this area. And that's why we launched then Revolution as the way to save this planet from our contribution, but it's not that we do it alone. Everyone come together. But since saving the planet is the biggest business opportunity of the 21st century, we don't want to put this on the side, having an purely a sustainability arm. We're working on how we are compliant. We do that, but we want to also drive this as a new business opportunity. That's why it's a separate company within the bigger company that is inviting you as startups, larger corporations, investors, everyone coming together, where we can find technologies that fit together to accelerate green tech. So let me explain a little bit what Hexagon is then, right? We said that is a highly valued company, but why? We have around 23,000 employees across the whole globe, everything related measurement and digital twins. So reality capture, meaning 3D representation. If people talk about digital twin, that is what you need to have. I think I have it here actually in the room. One of these like handheld scanners, for example, if you just want to scan in this room and make that as a full 3D representation or any type of construction site or whatever you might need. This is the smallest type of scanners. But we then have airborne LiDARs that you put on plane. We take satellite geospatial data, all this together, and that is in the reality capture. We have positioning software, knowing exactly where things are down to 2 centimeters accuracy. Of course, that is used a lot in any type of navigation and military applications. Design and simulation, for example, when they were landing on Mars, that was using Adam software, which is Hexagon software as a simulation. And the whole geo-referenced and digital world when it comes to that intelligence. All this is coming together, both on the real world where we have physical assets and the digital twin representation of our software. So when we merge these two, that is really what we believe is the smart digital reality. It's not a purely digital twin. It is when you get actionable insights and we move forward. And we have then the sensors, as I showed you last one, and we have this on autonomous vehicles, we have it on drones, we have it on more advanced surveillance cameras, and then the software stack that comes all the way from planning, design, build, operate, and manage any type of digital assets. That's what we consider a smart digital reality. From an R-evolution perspective then, we take all these software and the hardware and merge that together on the green tech space. Everything to accelerate and make that a little bit more efficient so that we can scale it across thousands of solar parks, wind parks, or any new type of green tech area. So here is an example. On the left side, you see the physical assets that we're using, in this case from Hexagon, but we can use from any type of partners too. But to scan in an area and make a 3D representation down to centimeters accuracy. If you guys are playing Counter-Strike, for example, you can go in and play Counter-Strike in my solar park, because that will now have full digital representation. With that, we can then start to do more advanced simulation, and we can come to that a little bit later. But just to see when you have the physical world, the sensors, and the digital world, and that is how we believe that we can make these type of assets even more efficient and therefore have a better chance to have the renewable space a little bit better. But if you do a little bit better across thousands and thousands of solar parks, we can make an impact and actually accelerate our path towards saving this planet. So from an R-evolution, we invest. We are an investment vehicle. We invest in cash flow generating projects in the green tech space. So that means like solar park, wind parks, hydrogen storage. And then later on now we have also activated our venture capital arm. So if you have an exciting idea, very interesting type of startup entrepreneur that you believe that our technology also can be a match, we would like to discuss with you. We're here to scale Hexagon and partner technologies so that we can do much, much better. If we can apply our software stacks, for example, also together with Google and other partners, we can make a better impact to digitalize these type of assets. And all about partner up. No one can save this planet alone, so I hope to be able to work with you and others to make a big impact. From my perspective, though, we only go in where this holds, where it's a real planet-saving opportunity. That means environmental, where we find experience across the Hexagon and our technology partner stacks, and so we're tech geeks, and where we see value. So we only go in profitable or where it's profit-driven approach to these projects. That's when we go an outcome and we run from an R-evolution. So today, On the cash flow generating area, we are doing a couple of initiatives. We started in February of 2021, so we have moved fast here, where we have a blue carbon initiative where we are using our bathymatic LiDAR and do a 3D representation of the seabed outside of the Bahamas and expanding around the Caribbean nations to protect the biodiversity of the seagrass meadows and convert that into blue carbon credits. We have our own solar parks, currently 2 of them in Spain, and we're building 2 green hydrogen facilities in Australia together with partners and have a digital native design for that. And on the wind side, we are on development projects in Sweden currently and open for new type of opportunities with others. But then it constantly into new wave. And personally, I'm a surfer, so I'm passionate to see if we can remove and help to accelerate with the help of our technology, but also with partners to remove both microplastics and like waste that is out in the ocean. But there's so much more to do. We are currently also invested in some desalination project and so. So that's the initiatives. So I can maybe just quickly touch upon like how these type of industrial solar parks look like. As you see, they're quite big. We have a single axis tracking, so it's following the sun, and bifacial, so we take sun from both angles. And let's see. The reason why we do this is that we get first-hand experience how to run and operate such an asset that generates a cash flow, and it's an innovation platform for us and our partners. So if, for example, you have a solution that is applicable to renewable site, we would love to test that application straight on, and you get all the data from this site. This is a collab space, you could say, to accelerate the renewable space. And here's just some examples of how that looks like when we have our own applications, how we're flying with drones. Let's see if I can get this to play. No, apparently not. That doesn't matter. All the videos apparently is not working, but it doesn't matter. We use then our reality capture drones. We have our cameras and so on. We move that into a point cloud, then add simulation software to know exactly where wind is going, so that we can make an AR interface and saying how hot is the panel, where is the wind, and then optimizing the angle of the panels, everything to generate real business outcome. That's the solar. I continue a little bit fast here. Then we'll move over to the ocean. My personally big passion project to really create a new economy with the help of blue carbon credits. Here it is that we are leveraging sharks. Makes this story quite interesting. Our partner had 100 tiger sharks connected with GoPros and sensors, and realized the only best way to conserve them was to better understand, or to protect these species, was to understand where they were spending their time. And it turned out that they spent most of their time where it was dense seagrass meadows. Then the team added go out and do coring, where they gather sample selections of the seagrass. And together with experts across the globe and MIT, they have found that it's 10 to 15 times more carbon sequestered in seagrass than it's in tropical rainforest. We then, from Hexagon Evolution, stepped out and needed to validate, because this is wide areas of seagrass meadows. Their initial estimate there was around 62,000 to 92,000 square kilometers of seagrass. How do you know that? You don't. You can't just go out with coring and having tiger sharks patrolling. That is not enough. But with that data sets, combine it with bathymatic LiDAR, which means that you put it from an airplane and make a digital representation of the seabed, we can get down to 5 centimeters accuracy and make a 3D representation. With our algorithm, we can also then convert that to say what type of seagrass. Is it Thalassia, is it Syringodium, and what density. That's commercially available, but has never been deployed in this case before. Now we are moving this and validating it with in situ data from research vessels and additional divers, and that's proven to be a very successful new type of validating seagrass. And why do you validate seagrass? It's because you can generate a new type of market. And in this case, we're looking at the voluntary carbon credits market, where we are teaming up with Beneath the Waves, having our multidimensional mapping from Hexagon Evolution, and Astro Global and other verification partners to verify that this is the best way to actually capture and sequester carbon. And then we have the Bahamian government that is very eager to make sure this is in place. So that they have committed to have this first blue carbon credits already done by this year. There's a commercial setup in place with sovereign fund and carbon management and a trading that will most likely be done at the New York Stock Exchange. So this is a totally new market with enabled by technology. Yeah, and here is just me sitting in one of these airplanes flying over there in Bahamas, how the output looks like with our multi-dimensional intelligent mapping, how that goes into categorization and CT data gathering to improve it. And when you take these different layers of orthophoto, shadowed relief, and then classified point cloud, we can be fairly sure about what type of seagrass and what density of seagrass and if there's algae or sand. And now we're talking about 1,100 square kilometers. Yeah, that is ocean. We are in hydrogen. We can maybe keep that short. We're taking a full digital twin of that. And right now it looks something like this. We have one project in Gladstone, one project in Peninsula Gateway in ERA. And this is H2U, that is the partner. They are the one that is doing this development, and we are providing digital native design so that any type of software stacks that their underlying partners are using or EPCs is integrated into our digital twin platform. And on wind, we're up high in the wind turbines too, and see how we can improve both the gearbox, but primarily then by having a fully operating lifetime twin. And so we're moving to that area too. So if you have good ideas on the renewable wind side, we're eager to experiment too, but we are primarily from an Hexagon perspective, 8 out of 10 gearboxes is already simulated with our software, but now we want to get into the lifetime twin. A lot of new things, eager to hear if you have ideas. But from the purpose of new ideas, we saw that we need to move even further. So we have these initiatives that we are investing in, but let's invest also in great entrepreneurs. So we launched something called R Ventures just a couple of months back. And that is where we are reaching out to any startup, entrepreneur, early ideas of what we can do to save this planet that can meet our criteria. So we do this because we want to see the breakthroughs to save the planet, but it really must be a big impact. We search this for entrepreneurs and tech leadership to where our technology from Hexagon can match. And we are providing smart money. That means seed investment and know-how from Hexagon. It's a smaller ticket. It's a 50 to 500K euro that we come in or with our in-kind technology from Hexagon, but primarily here to scale the idea that the entrepreneur, the startup is driving forward. So planet positive impact, where it's business proven, and we need to see that there is already a market fit, some kind beyond MVP, and that there is a customer base. When if it's a technology match with our Hexagon technology, that is when we run. So if you have any of these ideas, we are more than happy to get you into our, let's say, little simplified process, but that we start to connect and we meet up and then go into more further due diligence and start to invest, and then we accelerate together. So yeah, in summary, I hope that this helped and gave a little bit of an understanding of how a big corporations like Hexagon, that is the leading tech company from Sweden, now address green tech in a very aggressive way, but from a business and profitability perspective, where we go hands-on. We do and document, not document and do. Hence, we go out, we acquire, we sit, we work with this, and we want to work tight with you if you have great ideas, because this is really one of the biggest business opportunities of the 21st century. So please join us, our Evolution, on like LinkedIn or wherever you might see, and feel free to connect with me if you have ideas. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Eric. It's extremely interesting to see Hexagon as a Swedish company growing so fast that you've been doing. If we compare for example, to Ericsson and all the value output you do both on the stock market, but also on the impact of the world. If we look at Hexagon's existing portfolio of both products and partners, how can startups jack into, like interesting startups jack into that portfolio and projects?
So let's say that you're a startup and you don't have the saving the planet as your biggest mission, but more maybe other areas, since we are covering multiple industries. I think we have 26,000 customers and across nearly all industries. Of course, there are always interest. We have started also an let's say call it an accelerator program, but primary our manufacturing intelligence divisions, and that's called 6 Sense. So if the case that you have any ideas that is more related to, let's say, how to improve manufacturing processes or doing things on the manufacturing site, that we have a direct venue to go to. So 6 Sense for any opportunities in the manufacturing space. Our evolution or ventures, anything that related to green tech. The others, it's more optimistic. We team up case by case, depending on which like type of solutions you have. So I think the easiest way is since I'm in the leadership team of Hexagon, if you have an idea, feel free to shoot it over to me. If I don't see that it fits either in the manufacturing space or in the green tech space, I can send it over to the relevant divisions that has those type of solutions. But I can't guarantee that they are taking it up, because you need to have a good pitch, otherwise they won't run.
Yeah. Oh, and that makes perfect sense. And I found Hexagon so interesting because you're really sort of measuring impact and then creating business value with that impact, and looking at it's not often that we see like companies talking about creating new markets with emerging technologies. You often do like incremental innovation. What's the time when Hexagon is looking at investments? What's the time frame for those investments? What should a pitch include in terms of impact on a time scale?
So from an our evolution perspective, we are quite liberal. We are open to all ideas, but we would like this to be something that is more solid, that you have some kind of customer, that there is an MVP in place. So it can't just be like, I have a great idea. That needs to be further than that. Then the time scale, as Hexagon, we are acquiring a company more or less either every month or every quarter, right? But then it is up and running business. So maybe it's more when you become more mature. It can also be time to revisit and discuss with us.
And looking at being here in Canada and this program having a focus between connecting Canada and Sweden, where we see in Canada a lot of AI or an AI enabling products in terms of data platforms, very advanced models being pre-trained, a new way of doing MLOps or DevOps. How is that an area of interest for Hexagon too?
Sorry, we have a little bit of background noise. You know, we're all working from home. So, but we actually have a quite big presence also in Canada, specifically on our AMP, Autonomy and Positioning Solutions, that is based out of Calgary, I think, in Canada. And our North American market is very, very strong. So there are a lot of potential also to just collaborate closely with Hexagon locally.
And Uffe, this is also a question for you, involving you in the discussion here. If a Canadian startup or if a Canadian scale-up has an interest in targeting the Swedish organizations, but might be Swedish organizations in Canada and then moving to Sweden, do you have any reference cases or strategies that has been certainly successful for Canadian smaller businesses or startups in the tech space?
Nothing that would be a one-size-fits-all. That is one of the big advantages of working with us, is that we really do case-by-case analysis. I have helped small startups with interesting innovations speak to, for example, say Ericsson for co-development or joint R&D. And I have also helped other startups speak to big accelerators, incubators, and other big companies. Sometimes it's a startup that has a marketable, ready to go to market product that is sort of almost on the shelf. And in that case, they could be interested in speaking to resellers that cater to a particular market segment. I would say that, not to leave you without an answer, I'd say that the first step would be speaking to somebody who is on the ground. It could be us, for example. It could be one of our very excellent colleagues at Business Sweden, and getting an idea, sort of like a personal feedback on, given that company's stage where they're at, it could be in finance or it could be in product development of their own product and what they're looking at, then get a recommendation for where they best would target first. But it really varies a fair bit. I mean, AI is so broad and it spans so many sectors. It can be so many different things. I hope it doesn't feel like I'm running away from your question, but I don't have a one size fits all. It would really vary depending on the sector, because AI spans so many different sectors now.
And what I also want to mention in this space is that if there's an interest in a Swedish organization, or if we can, well, you applied to the program and we've found an interesting partner, we might look into obviously making a commercial, so really making a transactional, based on a transactional deal. But there's also a lot of funding opportunities between Canada and Sweden, as Canada is basically an extended part of Europe now through the Canadian European Union trade agreement. So we also want to help you identify opportunities together with Swedish partners. It could be Swedish researchers, it could be institutions, but obviously we want this to be a commercial successful program, because we also understand that revenues is really, really important for you as a startup. I want to open up the room to see if there's any questions from some of the participants. Either you could use the chat, or you could also just turn on your camera and your microphone and ask your questions.
But perhaps before a question pops in, Peter, I just wanted to ask you, do you know if Vinnova, for example, still offers that incentive for bringing people over from Canada to Sweden or from Sweden to Canada for 6 months to do joint development?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's the kind of stuff that you at AI Sweden are very well positioned to help. It's just one example among many of different sort of financing schemes and aids that are related to the sector that are available for Canadian companies as well.
Yeah. So that is something that we do. We have researchers and both researchers and applied researchers on site in Canada now to take part of this ecosystem. But what we also want to do is to enable Canadians or Canadian representatives to go to Sweden to really explore the ecosystem. And that is why we're hosting this program, because it's always easier. Like we've been spending a fair amount of time in Zoom and in Meets and all these platforms. But to really enable collaboration and find opportunities and sort of explore partnerships, it's always a good idea to actually go there and meet physically to get a real understanding of the operations or the organizations in Sweden. So there's a lot of different opportunities, and we want to be your guide in all of them, with the help of Business Sweden and the Canadian Embassy too. Do we have a question? No. Yes.
Yeah. So I think Uffe. Yeah. So you're working at the Canadian Embassy in Sweden.
That's right. Officially, I work for the Trade Commissioner Service, and we are part of the commercial department at the embassy, because the embassy has a political section, it has a commercial section, it has a consular section. So we work on the trade side. Okay, that's good. Yeah, because I just I came over to Sweden a few weeks ago just to actually just get the lay of the land, as was just said, and just to understand how things work over here. And you know, I kind of knew that Volvo was in Sweden. I just didn't know that all of the automobile industry is really in the West here. And it's really great because that's what I'm focused on, which is AI for autonomous driving and smart roads technology. So I'm wondering, how would your organization be able to help a startup like mine and
if it's possible, or are we able to connect after?
Absolutely, by all means. You're welcome to contact me. I think Peter can make my contact information available. It's a long email. I wish they had given me a simple one. I'm always envious of people at startups who have an email like john@something.com. Not our case, but yeah, happy to talk to you later. And I also happy to connect you with my colleagues at Business Sweden. We do complementary services, but I'll be very happy to have that first chat with you and understand what your value proposition is, for example, and sort of understand if you have any sort of like unique selling propositions, what differentiates, so that I better understand how we can help you. So a first conversation is usually a good first start, and happy to talk to you later. Yeah. And that goes for any other company that is attending this presentation.
Thank you very much.
And I will send an intro right after this webinar. We will share all of the to all of the attendees. We'll share this both the recording. So if there's any like thoughts about the content, or you want to go back to something, the recording will be available on AI Sweden's YouTube channel later today, or Canadian time. And then we'll also send out the links to the Hexagon's Revolution program to get an even more in-depth insight into some of the programs, and also to Hexagon, obviously, because there's a lot of potential in both collaborating or partnering up with Hexagon, but also as a potential acquirer in the future of your company if you have an interesting technology, because it's really, as Eric said, a very powerful and fast-moving Swedish corporate that might be less known for some, like not known that it's Swedish at the beginning, and a lot of decisions are still made in Sweden, but really on a global scale. And then we have the next event on the 9th of or 7th of December, same time, that you will get an invitation to, where we will talk more about advanced manufacturing, and might be some automotive and mobility in that too. And just to see the doors we can open up. We have a lot of different openings and matchmaking going on with the startups that have applied to the program. So some of you have already applied, and there will be one-pagers going out to Swedish organizations to really look for their interest. And as soon as there's an interest, we'll do a matchmaking or an introduction. But we'll definitely team up with you, Uffe, here to open up even more potential connections. If there's not any more questions as of now, Alexander, is there something that I've forgotten? Or
I think you covered it all, Peter.
Yes, and yes, we'll share the application link too. I'll do that in the introduction to Uffe there too. Otherwise, I want to say thank you so much to Uffe, especially thank you to Eric with the extremely, both for the presentation, but also the very valuable work you're doing with Revolution. And I think we'll do this in a couple of months again, or a couple of maybe a year, to see the progress that is happening in the environmental space. And Alexander, thank you to you. We hope to see more applications to the program, and if you're watching the recording, links will be down below in the description. And I hope to see you on the 7th of December for our next webinar. So thank you so much all, and I will see you soon.
Thank you, Peter. This is fun. Thank you for putting this together.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.